Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I am seeing that we're getting quite a few people logging in. I'm just going to give them a couple more minutes as people are seeing the reminders perhaps pop up on their computers just now. So if you'll just give us a couple minutes to let everyone log in, that would be great. All right, so in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. Again, I appreciate all of you joining us for the second webinar in the California Trailblazer series presented by Shift3 Technologies. So this was originally designed to be a roadshow so that we could meet each of you face to face, but given the circumstances, we're still very fortunate that we have technology that will allow us to continue to share with you, despite most of us working from home. So on that note, I do want to apologize. You may hear the dogs playing in the background as I speak. That's just one of those challenges that some of you may also be experiencing working from home. So this 7-part series was designed to provide you with unique content that you could immediately put to use in your own organization, focusing on increasing user adoption, increasing efficiency, and also to get your Salesforce org operating at the levels that you expected it to when you first deployed it. Each session will have a different keynote speaker and different training session content, so you can attend one or you can attend all of them. Allow me to introduce myself and my dogs, since they're making so much noise right now. They were completely quiet before I started this webinar. I apologize. I'm Janae Dubois, the Director of Growth Marketing for Shift3 Technologies. I see many familiar names on our list this morning, which is exciting to me. So I may have already met you at SenCal Dreamin' that we held at Bitwise Industries in January, or perhaps you attended last week's webinar that we virtually held in Stockton. So today's session will include a keynote from Justin Powers, followed by a training session from Jacob Aguilar. I will then open it up for Q&A for you to ask questions of both speakers. I want to direct your attention to the GoToWebinar dashboard that you may see on your screen. There is a questions portion of that dashboard that I encourage you to use throughout the presentation, and go ahead and type your questions in there as they come to mind. And during the Q&A portion of today's webinar, I will go through those questions and ask them of the speakers. Following the Q&A, we will have JP Prendergast from Shift3 give us a quick overview about Shift3 Technologies. At the very end, we're going to give you some information that you definitely won't want to miss. So I encourage you to stay all the way to the very last slide so you can get that information. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker of the day, Justin Powers.
Hi, thank you, Janae. All right, let me get set up here. All right, you should be seeing just a blank screen. Oh, now it says move with purpose. Janae, can you still see my screen?
Yes,
Okay.
you are live.
All right. So thanks everybody. Um, so the talk today I calling move with purpose. How to make the most important thing the most important thing. First, a little bit about myself. My name is Justin Powers. And this is where I live. I live in the Kern River Valley. So for those of you who are tuning in from Kern County, we're in East Kern County, northeast of Bakersfield. I'm actually the seventh generation of my family to grow up in this valley. It actually looks a little bit different right now. Last night we got a lot of snow, and everything you see in this picture is now white. A little bit about my background. It actually goes way further off to the left than this. I've done a lot of. I started out, here in the Kern River Valley as a whitewater raft guide. I've been a business analyst, a finance analyst. In 2009, I picked up programming. I started with Ruby on Rails, and in 2012, I started working for Salesforce. Worked for Salesforce for 7 years. Started out working on desk.com, which for those of you who are not familiar, desk.com, it was a smaller version of Service Cloud. It was a very easy to use, easy to get signed up way of building a service desk. And the idea was that as you started to, your startup started to grow and get bigger, that you would move from there to Service Cloud. That unfortunately shut down. Last month actually is when they turned off the lights on that. But a lot of great lessons learned from that. And then after that, I worked on Trailhead, and hopefully everybody here that works in Salesforce is familiar with Trailhead. It's a fantastic way of learning Salesforce. Fast forward a bit, 2 years ago, I opened up Kernville Cowork, and that's what you're seeing behind me. The cowork is almost empty right now, but this was something that I built as a way of creating a community of people that work the same way, and allowing more opportunities for people to work where they play. On the first of this year, I quit my job at Salesforce and I started a new startup called FireVision. FireVision is a drone-based thermal imaging platform for wildland firefighting operations. We're really excited about it, and I think it's going to be a really big thing. But that's not what I came here to talk about. So when Janae first contacted me about giving a keynote presentation, I came up with some ideas, and I had a pretty good idea of what I was going to talk about. But I'm sure we're all aware a lot has changed over the last few months, and I decided to change what I'm talking about to kind of address what we're all kind of facing right now. While the coronavirus has certainly forced us all to make a lot of drastic changes, one other thing that it's forcing us to do is to focus on what is most important right now in this time. So, if it's really easy to just feel like you need to stay busy, feel like you need to be doing something. But with all this going on, it's really easy to just spin your wheels. And it's a very important time now more than ever to just kind of step back and say, what is the most important? What do I need to be focusing on right now? Now, one tool that I find is incredibly helpful with this, the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, came up with this, and this was an integral part of how Salesforce was started. For those of you who aren't familiar with that story, please go read up on it. There's a great blog entry on the V2 Mom and what it means and how it helped Salesforce get started. There's also a great Trailhead module on it, which I'll share with you at the end. But V2 Mom stands for Vision, Values, Methods, Obstacles, and Measures. And I found that it really helps to helps you kind of distill and figure out exactly what is the most important thing, and how are you going to focus on getting that done? So when we're talking about vision, we're talking about what it is that you're going to do. What is I think we're all pretty familiar with what a vision statement is. But what we don't see quite as often is the values. Why are you doing the thing that you're doing? Without the values, the vision just isn't important, or the vision may not even connect to what it is that you really want to do. It's important to write down your methods. How are you actually going to accomplish the thing that you said you're going to do? And one thing I think perhaps sometimes we don't do enough of is recognizing what obstacles are in our way. We need to be able to call those out. If we ignore them and put them in a corner, odds are we're not going to be fully effective at what we're trying to do. And then we actually need to know if we're successful at what it is that we're trying to do. So we do need to have some measures in there. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how the V2MOM is used at Salesforce. At Salesforce, there's a company-wide V2MOM that's used that essentially the CEO and his team puts together. And this is the vision, the value, the methods, obstacles, and measures for Salesforce as a whole. But then they did this really neat thing where all of the CEO's direct reports create their own V2MOM that kind of channel the vision and the values, but make them their own. So the head of marketing is going to have a different V2MOM than, say, the head of product. And then all their direct reports do. And it keeps going down like that for each and every person in the company, all the way down to the lowest person. So I created a V2MOM that was specific to what my vision was as it relates to my manager's vision, as it relates to the CEO's vision. And so this is important that when you're making this, don't try to say, okay, what is the vision for this large company? Say, what is the vision for me and what I'm doing in this time? How am I reacting, for example, to the COVID-19 crisis? You got to keep it alive. So one thing that that Salesforce did is it required every single one of their employees to update their V2MOM at least twice a year. And I think that's really important. It needs to be something that, maybe even more than that. My values, what was most important to me, was different on the 1st of January than it is today. The world has changed, everything has changed, and we need to change our vision. We need to keep our vision updated and our values updated. And this is, I think, the biggest, most helpful part of writing all of these things down is you can use it as a filter for making decisions. So anytime we have a difficult decision, either with Kernville Cowork or with Fire Vision or any of the other things that we're working on, I go back to the V2MOM that we've created for each of those projects. And I say, okay, well, given our values, what's the best way to do this? How do we move forward while respecting our values and following the vision and using those methods that we called out at the beginning? But I do think if I had Mark Benioff in front of me, one thing I might say is I wouldn't go vision first. I would actually start with the values because it's really hard to say what you're going to do until you understand why you're doing it. So when you're crafting your vision, your values, and how you're going to get it done, start with the values. Now, that's something that a lot of us don't have a lot of practice with. It's something that is a bit strange, a bit novel for a lot of us. So there are some great strategies for kind of coming up with brainstorming techniques for coming up with what your values are. One is this works really great for teams. If you have a team of people and you're trying to come up with a V2MOM for the team, set a timer. 3 minutes usually is plenty of time. And just get a stack of Post-it notes and just start writing down thoughts and ideas. One thought, like one word or even just a few words per Post-it note. And the idea is you're going for quantity, not quality. You just want to get a lot of stuff out there on the paper. And then what I do is I put them all on a whiteboard. I don't organize them by whose is whose. I just put them out there, and then we start kind of organizing them into themes. From there, you pick 3 of those themes, and then those are your values. So it's really easy to just kind of say that. But let's do a little bit of an in-person thing. So get ready, you are actually going to be participating in this. I've got a hypothetical scenario. We've got this this Drive dealership, right? This car dealership is right now in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. They still want to connect with their customers. They still want to, for those customers that are in need of replacing their vehicle, they still want to be able to help them, but they can't meet anybody in person. They're using Salesforce for tracking their leads and their opportunities. So they've got some technology in place. Maybe they don't have a lot more, but they've got they've got the basics down. Can't accept any walk-in customers, and they want to continue connecting with their customers. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try out this thing, and if it doesn't work, we can always do something else. But you should be seeing a URL, slides.app.google. You can see it there at the top of the screen. If everybody could go ahead and just go ahead and open up that URL, and you'll get a Q&A panel. And so as you're typing things in there, I'll be able to see them. So what we're going to do in just a moment, I'm going to start a timer. And in the interest of time, I'm probably going to keep it to 1 to 2 minutes. But let's everybody, imagine you're in the place, you're the owner of this car dealership. You want to try and reach out to your customers. What are some of the values that you would think are most important? What is kind of the foundation of how you would want to make those decisions? What would you use as a filter for those decisions? So just put in use the Q&A feature there. 1 word or short phrase per message. Just put as much as you can. I'd like to see everybody come up with at least 5. If you there's an anonymous box there, feel free to check it if you don't want me to know who you are. And there's not going to be any judgment on any of these the responses anybody puts in, and no need to respond to other people's responses. You should be able to see other people's responses, but go ahead and start putting them in. I'll give everybody about 2 minutes, and we'll see how this goes. First time I'm trying something like this, so if we have any technical difficulties, we may have to move on. So let me see if I can. So I might start out with what would be a good value. So as an example, I might put something like connection, like I want to have connection with my customers, or value. That's something for a car dealership. Yes, repeat the question. So just write down any just single words or phrases of a value that you may have as this car dealership. And I'm gonna go back a couple slides. So this is the dealership we're talking about. So put yourself in this guy's shoes. You're sitting there in your coat, in your suit. You want to sell a car, but nobody can come into your dealership. So without even getting into how we're going to do it, like what is most important? So I'm seeing supportive. I'm seeing integrity. Very good. Keep them coming. I'm seeing some really great ones. Transparency, honesty, trust. All right. Now, can everybody see the other responses as well? You may have to refresh that little that page. Okay, so all right, it's been about 2 minutes. So I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to read them real quick, and then we'll come up with a couple themes, and then we'll move on. So supportive, integrity, thoroughness, clarity, connection, helpful, trust, honesty, informative, ease of purchase, relevance, connection, clear value proposition, transparency, honesty, safe, openness, service, no hassle, convenience here for you. These are great. So what I would do then if we were putting, I would take all these and I would put them up on a whiteboard, right? I don't want to take that much time out of your guys' days. So, but what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing a lot around integrity and trust. So I would definitely have that as a as one of the values. Now, some of you may have if you're familiar at all with the Salesforce's culture, they always have trust as their number one value for any of these things. So, oh, did you lose my audio? Somebody says that they lost my audio. It looks like I'm still broadcasting. Another one I like is I'm seeing some about convenience, so that could certainly be a great value. And then we've got, let's try and come up with one more theme here. Let's say connection. So I'm just gonna write those down because I think those are great. So I'm going to say trust, connection, and convenience. Okay. So now, if you are writing your V2 Mom, and I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Oops. If you're writing your V2 Mom, then you start with the values, and then the vision comes out of that. So if you're saying our values are trust, connection, and convenience, then you create your vision or your what. How are you going to respond? How are you going to move forward, keeping those values in mind? One really important thing is it's really easy to say, I want to do everything. I want to solve all the world's problems. The term I'm particularly fond of is boiling the ocean, right? You can't be everything to everyone. So keep your vision concise. Then we get to methods. So the methods are specifically what are you going to do. And the methods, obstacles, and measures, each of them could have their own talk and it could last an hour. But we're going to kind of breeze through these because I've got a bit more to cover. But with the methods, it's important to be very specific about what you're going to do. And we'll come up with some examples of that in the future or in a moment. Obstacles, what could get in your way? And the metrics are how will you know if you're on track? One thing, one term to be familiar with is vanity metrics. We'll get into this a little bit later as well, but don't pick something that is just there because it makes you feel good or it seems like it would be a good metric. So for the car dealership, if they're looking at the total numbers of cars sold, that's actually not a good way of seeing if their vision is being carried forward. And we'll give a good example of that a little bit later. So the V2 Mom kind of gives you a framework around kind of deciding what's most important. But now you have to look at where the rubber meets the road. And so the next thing that I think is really important is MVP, and this is a most valuable player. This is something that came, one of the best descriptions I've seen of the MVP comes from the lean startup. MVP stands for minimum viable product. This came from, if you want to kind of go way back in history, this came from the Toyota production system, which was, and lean manufacturing, which was kind of a new way of of manufacturing that really kind of changed the auto industry. The programming and development industry picked up on that, and they they borrowed some of that and they created agile methodologies. And the lean startup kind of picks a lot from all of those, and kind of thinks about how organizations can be more effective. So what is an MVP? Minimum viable product. You take the most important thing and what you can possibly do to make that happen, your vision. You take your vision and you distill it down. Okay, and then you make it even smaller. Odds are the minimum viable product, the smallest thing that you can build, is a lot smaller than you would actually imagine it would be. So what is the smallest thing I can build that will produce value towards that most important thing? What it is we're talking about in our vision and our values. So before I get too much further into kind of building an MVP and what that looks like, I'm going to take you through a world example. I actually sat down this week and thought through, okay, well, I've got a V2 Mom for Kernville Cowork. We've got our vision and our values, and we put it on our website. But right now, the most important thing today is not the most important thing when I created that V2 Mom. So I sat down and I actually did the same thing. I spent 3 minutes. I spat out a bunch of words and then I grouped them into themes. So here's our values. At Kernville Cowork, in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis, we move with purpose and we focus on the most important thing. Obviously, that's front of mind because that's what we're talking about today. One other thing I realized is that desk space isn't the most important thing. I have a co-working space where people, on the surface, people are paying money so that they can use desk space for a day, part of a day, on a daily basis. But that's not really what Kernville Cowork is about. Kernville Cowork is about the relationships between us. And our third value is we're stronger together. We allow space for everyone to use their unique strengths to support the community, which helps us all to thrive. From that, I created a vision. You will build a community of people that connect and collaborate for work, learning, and play. We will connect and collaborate in new, innovative ways and in greater depth than typical work, learning, and play relationships. Okay, and that didn't take me very long. It wasn't something that you need to spend weeks coming up with. The important thing is that it's what you're focusing on right now. I'm just going to kind of run through the second half of the methods, obstacles and measures. We're going to create simple events for interaction and collaboration using the best available tools such as Hangouts and, that was supposed to be Hangouts and Zoom. We're going to create a series of educational webinars and workshops for both the community and the local businesses. And we're going to invite the Kern River Valley community to participate in building the co-working community. So each of these is one kind of concrete thing that I am going to do to get us closer to that vision. Now, if I was iterating on this, maybe the third one is a little bit vague. I should actually say how I'm going to invite the Kern River Valley community. So maybe I'm going to invite them, via Facebook and via LinkedIn and the radio and the newspaper, because that's how people communicate up here. You want to be very specific. What are the obstacles? Well, here's a big one. COVID-19 is preventing people from meeting in person. Obviously, that could get in the way of building community. People are used to connecting face-to-face, and they may not consider other ways of building relationships. It's not obvious to people that there are ways of kind of fighting the isolation aside from meeting people in person. Technological literacy is an obstacle for some. In a lot of our local businesses, I don't know what it's like in your communities, but I know in my community, a lot of our restaurants, a lot of our shops, our technological literacy is a really big issue that kind of prevents them from connecting with their customers in this time. And there's a flood of noise in everybody's news feeds. It's hard for us to stand out above the noise. So I hope as we're going through this, you're kind of seeing, not so much learning what Kernville Cowork is doing. I want you to take this and kind of look at this from your own perspective, from your organization's perspective. How would you call out the obstacles that are in your way? How would you call out the the methods that you're actually going to do? Measures. Now I talked a little bit about vanity metrics. A vanity metric for Kernville Cowork might be our total revenue. It might be the number of memberships, but that could be driven by so many things, not necessarily the specific methods that we're employing. So we need to make sure that our measures match up with the methods, but more specifically the vision of what it is we're trying to accomplish. So if part of our methods is to create virtual events, we need to look at how many people are attending those virtual events. Not all of those are going to generate revenue, but they are bringing us closer to our vision. Another example might be number of new signups for co-working space memberships, paid webinar attendees. And these are some example numbers that you always want to have a concrete number. You don't just say I'm going to measure something. You also want to put a goal in there. Number of member referrals per week. Now, this is where it's really important to start writing these down. If I was just going out there and just starting a bunch of webinars and starting a bunch of things, it may not occur to me that if part of the vision and part of the values is connectedness and community, well, one of the best ways of seeing if people are really feeling connected is if they're inviting other people to get connected as well. That's how you know you're building a community. If I wasn't purposeful about that, I might miss that. But now that I've written it down, now I realize, oh shoot, I need to actually have a way of measuring that. So now the first thing I'm going to do before I even start creating webinars and stuff is make sure I have a method where my members can refer other people and in a way that I can track it and kind of see whether or not we're actually engaging the community and encouraging the community to engage others. So, using Kernville Cowork, a real world example, I've got my vision, I've got my values, my methods. Now we need an MVP, a minimum viable product, right? So, one thing I could do is I could create an online collaboration platform, right? We could, build a platform where people can connect to each other and collaborate on things, maybe see each other face to face, share documents. That kind of seems like too much. It's not a minimum viable product. Okay, so let's slim it down. Let's create a virtual co-working. Virtual co-working might just be a Zoom call where we all can see each other's faces. We can chat every once in a while, but we're all kind of heads down working on things. That kind of replicates the office environment. But you know what? Even that, if we're talking about minimum, first I need to know if people are actually willing to connect online, right? Those are that plays exactly to my methods. It's something that we were we discussed in the obstacles. So I need to let's just see if we can get people to connect. So an even smaller minimum viable product might be a virtual happy hour. And this is just where once a week, and we're already doing this. We just started doing it a few weeks ago, where we have a Zoom call, and everybody in the co-working space, and in fact anybody on this call, if you want to join on Friday, we just join into a Zoom call. Alcohol's allowed, but not necessarily required. And it's just a time for off-topic discussion, whatever's on people's minds. Obviously, the first few weeks it was a lot of talk about the coronavirus, but now we're starting to build deeper relationships and start to learn more about each other that we didn't know before. So, kind of going back to Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, kind kind of one of the key parts of a minimum viable product is that you need to implement it as part of this build, measure, learn feedback loop. So these are three kind of distinct stages, but it's more of a continuum. So you build something, you build the very smallest thing you possibly can build that still provides some amount of value. Sorry about that, my headset just turned off for a moment. So you build the smallest thing that can possibly provide value. You put it out there, you let people use it. Maybe you find a small group of early adopters that can jump in and try it out. Maybe you throw it out there, for a subset of your users. Maybe you just have a guinea pig in the office that can try it out. But you build something and you have people try it, and then you come up with ways of measuring whether or not it actually accomplished what it is that you're expecting to accomplish. And then the most important part is learn. So it's one thing to say, oh, we've got these great metrics. Oh, we can see them going up, we can see them going down. But if you're not actually turning that into actual learnings and changing your behavior based on them, then it's basically just theater. So when you're in the build stage, you start out by creating a hypothesis. So if I do blank, it will create value by blank. So going back to the example of our car dealership, we've got our values that you guys came up with are trust, connection, convenience. So what would a minimum viable, well, what is the hypothesis? If I give people the ability to purchase online, it will create value by allowing us to stay connected with our customer. Or even getting a little more simpler than that, if I give my customers the ability to connect with us virtually, such as even just a little buy now button. They go to our website, they can see our inventory because we already have it. But rather than saying, come in and visit us on the lot, give them a little buy now button. If people think, oh, I can buy a car online, they click on it. It doesn't have to be, if we were doing kind of more traditional development, we might want to build up a whole store, build up a whole purchasing process, figure out how to do financing online. But this is a minimum viable product. So why not create a buy now button and just have it go to a simple web form where they put in their information, and then it connects them directly to an associate. We could do something, we can hook it up with Service Cloud, for example, and use Live Agent and have them connect directly to a car salesman. Whatever the smallest thing is that you can do, and it will create value by allowing us to connect with our customers. So we get into the measure part of the loop. So rather than, like I said, measuring how many cars we're selling, if our values are connection and convenience, maybe say how many people are actually connecting with a salesperson. How long are they talking with the salesperson? Are they engaged? Are they actually staying on the line and learning more and discussing the purchase? How many of them are actually talking to financing? Are we able to get financing into the conversation? You always want to think in terms of testing your hypothesis. Seeing as our hypothesis was about allowing us to connect with interested customers, that's what you want to measure. You don't want to measure anything else. You want to measure what your hypothesis is. Oops. Oh, Okay, and that one didn't have, okay. And then we get into the learn part of the loop. So did what you measure, did it end up supporting your hypothesis? And here's the important part. You need to celebrate when you're wrong. If we try something out and it falls flat, our customers aren't into it, well, what that means is we just didn't spend 6 months or a year building something that our customers didn't want. We've saved so much time and energy that we can now focus on, okay, what's the next thing that we can build? What's the next thing we can try? What's the next hypothesis we can test? And so what this does is it creates this kind of feedback loop. As you learn, you come up with the next thing to build. I like this quote from the Lean Startup that really kind of distills it down. Instead of making complex plans that are based on a lot of assumptions, you can make constant adjustments with a steering wheel called the build, measure, learn feedback loop. I highly recommend the book. I think it's definitely at the top of my list for books that really kind of help change the way that you get things done, both as a leader, as an individual contributor. I think it's actually valuable for everybody. Don't get turned off by the term lean startup, because you can really create a startup within your own company or in your own life. So that was my presentation. Feel free to email me or add me on LinkedIn. If you do add me on LinkedIn these days, because I've got some startups, I get a ton of sales pitches on LinkedIn and I just tend to ignore them. So please mention that you were listening to the California Trailblazer series, and that's the reason you wanted to connect. I did, for those of you who are not familiar with Trailhead, you do need to get familiar right away. For those of you who are, I created a trail mix that has some more information, especially on the V2 MOM and a little bit on kind of agile methodologies. You can either go to this very long link, or you can just go to Trailhead, search for Move with Purpose, and make sure you filter by trail mixes in the drop down there. So that's all I have. I'm a little bit under time, but I understand we're going to have time at the end of all the presentations for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. All right, so let's move. Just give me 1 second here. All right. So allow me to introduce our next speaker. Jacob Aguilar started in the Salesforce ecosystem in May of 2019 and is now working with Shift3 Technologies as a Salesforce certified administrator. Jacob actually holds 5 total Salesforce certifications, including Certified App Builder, Certified Sales Cloud Consultant, Certified Service Cloud Consultant, and Certified Community Cloud Consultant. He has been able to improve and translate many business processes for Bitwise Industries into Salesforce with declarative building, automations, and web development skills. He is currently working on Bitwise Industries initiatives Onward, California.org, and Take Care. He is also an instructor by night at GeekWise Academy, helping formerly incarcerated individuals learn to be Salesforce admins. When he is not at work, Jacob is at work. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Jacob.
Perfect, thank you so much. Let me start sharing my screen here. All right. Can everyone see my screen by chance or no?
It looks like you have the presentation open and there's some tabs up on top as well.
Perfect. All right. So again, welcome guys. I truly appreciate you guys being here, taking time out of your day to come to this. So like Janae was introducing, my name's Jacob. I just before starting as an intern for Bitwise Industries, I graduated from University of Phoenix. I got my background in software engineering, and then I started taking more web development classes at GeekWise Academy, which is like the education arm of Bitwise. And shortly just after taking some classes, I got invited to become part of this Salesforce cohort where a team of us were learning admin skills and Salesforce development skills. And since then, I've been able to do a ton of stuff with Salesforce. I'm still learning. I think we're all in kind of an always learning mode, at least I am. But without further ado, we're going to talk about flows today. We're going to talk about the basics of flows, walk away with some of the best practices for flows, and then just the different types and styles of flows you can use inside your organization to help your users get stuff done faster. And so just kind of kicking things off, different types of flows. So what happens, there's two different main styles of flows. There's auto launch flows and you have screen flows. And auto launch flows are very behind the scenes. When you set these up, they are basically they're doing some functionality for your users. They don't really see it unless something goes wrong. But basically when they click on a button or to do a certain action, update the stage and opportunity, it'll fire a flow however you designed it, and it'll do certain actions for your user that they don't have to do now. And the best part about these is they don't require user interaction. They just kind of silently lurk in the background. And these can be launched from process builders, custom buttons and links, Visualforce, Apex. I've never done the last two. I'm not a developer right now by any means. However, I know it can be done. Then you have screen flows. Screen flows are super, super, super cool. They allow you to gather input and allow your users to interact directly with the flow on a screen, hence screen flows. Basically, you can set up dynamic choices. If this checkbox is checked, show these fields instead. If it's not, hide them. And you can really guide your users in like almost a wizard-like format. And they can be launched from actions. You can have them embedded on Lightning pages. And let's say like, for us example, we use screen flows for walkthroughs for leasing. So whenever a tenant moves in or out, we do a walkthrough. And basically from there, they click a button, they fill out the walkthrough form all in the flow, and it saves it all to the lease record. But these can be launched from actions, Lightning pages, custom buttons and links. You can even have them in your communities, which is really cool. Visualforce and so much more. I can't go all into it, but those are the most common ways I would feel. But it's also important to understand the context of how flows run as well. So auto launch flows, they normally run in system context. And what that means is they will ignore certain security that you have set up for your users. So because they are in system mode, they will still use their record level sharing set up in your org, but it will ignore the object permissions and your field level security permissions. Whereas screen flows typically run in user context. And what that means is it'll only run or only be able to touch objects, fields, or records that user has access to. And basically now, as of spring 20th, matter of fact, Salesforce basically updated or allow you to choose which context flows run in. You can either set them to run in system context or a user context. And what that allows you to do, at least for us, we have a key code system in our Salesforce org. And before, we had that stored in custom settings behind the scenes. And unless you had a certain permission to go and view setup and configuration, normal users couldn't access that custom setting. Now, using a system context, we can actually allow our co-work space for hashtag to update key codes on the fly, from within Salesforce. And she is still able to update those custom settings even without having a direct permission to do so. So super cool stuff you can do with flows. Now, it's kind of important to know though, the building blocks of flows. And if you're just getting started with flows, these are the main 3 things you need to know how to build flows. So on your left, you have elements, and these are basically stuff you can drag onto the screen. Screens will only appear in screen flows, and it'll show that when you start creating a flow. Actions and subflows. Subflows are super cool. You can use flows to call other flows, and you can get really complicated with them or as real simple as you want, up to you. There's also assignments, decisions, loops, and we also have their basic CRUD permissions, creating, reading, updating, and deleting. Now, those are your basic elements. This is how you'll build a flow in the first place. In the middle here, we have connectors. And so basically, this is how you tell your flows which path or which way you want to go. And basically from here is, you can see here, we're starting the flow, we're going to get some records, and then from there, we go to a decision. Is the contact ID null? If it's not null, go update some records. If it is null, display a screen saying there's an error. And finally, we have resources. Resources can be a wide variety of things. They can be any custom variables that you make in the flow. They can be any pick list values. So flows are kind of smart enough to know when you're trying to update a pick list field, it'll display all the values you can set for it as well, and as well as like any custom formulas you want to build. And it'll also display basically any element on the screen as well. You'll see what I mean when we get more into the flow. But without further ado, I really just want to get into building a flow with you guys. And I think by that time, at the end, we have a good grasp on what we can do with flows. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go to my flow builder. So this is just a blank flow that I built. Basically, the whole purpose of this flow I'm going to build right now is the why. Basically, right now in our leasing department, whenever a user basically creates a lease record in our system, we want to be able to create an automatic renewal opportunity for a year later when that lease expires. And so that's the whole purpose of what we want to do right now. So with, what I'm going to do is my first element. I want to get some records. I'm actually going to get the opportunity that started off this whole process. So I'm just going to drag an element onto the screen to get records from my element bank. And from here, this is kind of brings me to our first best practice when building flows. You always want to document, describe, and detail what the heck you are doing inside your flow. When I used to teach code, or even when I was teaching Salesforce administration at GeekWise, I always told students, imagine the person who has to maintain your flows or your code as a psychopath, and they know where you live. Don't make them angry. And so I always, when I'm building flows, I document who built it. So it was created by me, and I put my initials and the purpose of the flow. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna grab the op record to clone later on in the flow. Now you can get as descriptive or as not descriptive as you want. I highly advise being more descriptive, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna kind of just go my very basic with my descriptions. And now I'm gonna tell it which object do I wanna grab? What records do I wanna grab from a certain object? And for me, I wanna say, I wanna get the opportunity before it's converted to a lease. So I'm gonna search for opportunity. Perfect. And now some other stuff comes up on the screen. It's telling me, hey, which opportunity records do you want to get? I can filter it by an ID, which is what I'm going to do. You can also filter it by a whole variety of fields. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to search for the ID. So I'm just going to type ID. There it is. So now what I'm going to say here is grab the opportunity record where the ID equals some value. And what I'm going to do here actually is I'm going to create a new resource. And what this means is I'm going to create a variable. And you can see there's other types of resources here. The main one that you're probably going to use 90% of the time is variables. Other 5% of the time is going to be formulas, and then other 5% is going to be constant text templates and stages. But I'm going to create a variable because I want to create a place to pass something in to use a specific opportunity ID. So I select variable. I'm going to name this, let's say op record ID. This kind of brings me to my next point as well. Whenever you're naming variables inside of code as well and inside of flows, be consistent with your naming. It doesn't have to be exactly how I'm doing it right here, but just be consistent throughout all the flow. And I would even dare say, be consistent with your naming schemes across all your flows. So I'm gonna say create op record ID. This is basically to store the ID of the record. And the way this is going to get populated is the process builder that we're going to attach to this to at the end is going to pass in the record ID of whatever op the user updates. So I'm going to say created by myself, purpose. Can't spell today apparently. All right, and store the record ID from the op passed in from the process. And then it'll finally ask you what type of data do you want to make this variable? Do you want to make it a text, a record, number, a whole wide variety of things? I would say the most common things I use is text and records. But since this is just going to be the ID, I'm just going to make it text. And then it brings you to my next screen or next subset of fields I can update. So you can see default value. Do you want to provide a default value? I don't really want to do that right now, so I'm not going to. But the most important thing, especially for this variable, is I want to make it available for input. And what that means is this variable will now be shown or exposed outside of this flow. So now you can pass stuff into this variable from an action, a process, other flows, and stuff like that. So I'm going to hit done. And now, basically, I'm going to go down here. Do I want to sort my opportunity records? I don't really care to do that right now because I'm only grabbing one record anyway. How many records do I want to store? Only the first record. I could click all, but there's only ever going to be one record found with this specific ID, so I don't need to worry about that. And this used to be much more tedious before as well with whenever you got records. Salesforce made you choose which fields, and then you had to create custom resources for each one of those fields to store. Now, Salesforce kind of does some magic and allows you to just automatically store all the field values from this record, and that's what I'm going to leave it as. So boom. So now what this will do is from the start, I'm going to drag this connector over to get records. And now whenever this flow starts, it's going to go to this first node and grab the opportunity record that was passed in from that process. Now, my next step is on opportunities, at least for our leasing department, we have a custom object called lease spaces. It's just a junction object. And we want to grab all the lease space records attached to that opportunity. So I'm going to do another get records. And I'm going to say get lease spaces from op. And again, you want to be putting your descriptions in. Purpose, grab all the lease space records from the original op. And what object I want to search for, again, I want to do lease spaces, so I'm going to search for that. Perfect. And now it's saying, just like how we did before, which lease spaces do you want to grab? And I want to grab all the lease spaces where its opportunity lookup is equal to that opportunity I just got, which is going to be the ID. As soon as I can find it. There it is. So now this is saying I'm going to grab any lease space records where its opportunity lookup is equal to that previous ID or that previous opportunity I just got. And then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to grab all the records. And normally what I would do is I could just leave it automatically store all the fields. However, it is actually best practice, and it kind of brings my next point is I'll do this. I'm going to say choose fields and assign variables advanced. Now it's going to say, hey, create a new collection. And what this means is because I am choosing to get all the lease spaces, because there could be more than one space a tenant is renting out, I need to get all the records. but you need to have a place to store all those records. And if we just did a variable for one record, it would error out if we try to grab more than one record. So a collection is just a collection of records. I'm gonna create a new resource. I'm gonna say, hey, let's make a variable. I'm gonna call this lease space collection. Again, you want to be descriptive with your descriptions. Let's see, created by myself, purpose, store all the type spaces attached to the original. Now my data type. I can't choose text for this one because we're not just storing an ID. We're grabbing all the records attached to that original opportunity. So I'm going to choose record. And now if I didn't check this box, it would only grab one record. I need to have all the records attached to the opportunity. So I'm going to select allow multiple values. And then which object do I want to grab from? I want to say grab the lease spaces. Perfect. And now I don't need to select this at all as well. This variable is not going to be exposed outside the flow, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to hit done. So now what this is saying is going to grab all the records, all the lease spaces attached to that original op and store them in this variable. And now I can say which fields I want to grab for each record. I'm going to grab the name of the record. I'm going to grab its opportunity lookup. I'm also going to grab the space lookup and its lease lookup. There it is. Okay. And this is probably the most important part of all this. Whenever you're grabbing or getting records outside that first node, because we know that first node is always going to be able to get a record because the process builder is going to pass in a specific ID, we want to check this box. When no records are returned, set these variables to null. And what that means is I'm going to click done. I'm going to drag this connector to my next one. Perfect. Oh, this annoys me. This is my OCD is kicking in. Okay, there we go. What this means though is when I select that box, if it can't find any of these records, let's say for some reason, even though we have a lease in our system and there's no lease spaces attached to that lease, I don't know what they're renting, but we can check now if this returns null, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to have a decision saying lease space equals null. And then I'm just going to describe what I'm doing in here. Purpose, check if the lease space collection is null. If not, then proceed. Perfect. And now in here is where I determine what criteria it has to meet. So I'm going to say null. And then what I'm going to do is, because in flows, you can only have one instance of an API name. Like you can't have multiple components called the same thing. I'm going to change this API name here. I'm going to say lease space collection null. That way I know this is a very specific API name that is directly related to this decision. And from here, I want to check if that collection I just got was null. And when you bring up search resources, it'll bring up this whole list. I don't want to check if the opportunity record ID is null. I want to check if this collection is null. So I'm going to click on that. In my operator, I'm going to click is null and true. So now it'll evaluate, okay, was that collection null? If so, go down this path. If it's not null, which I'm going to set up now, it's going to go down another path. And then my decision is made. I can connect it to my flow, and perfect. All right. So now I have a node to get the opportunity record. I have a node or an element to get the least space records attached to that original opportunity record. And now I'm doing a check to make sure that this actually does return something to me. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and create my opportunity, or this is going to be my cloned opportunity. Remember back in the beginning, I want to create a renewal opportunity based off that original one before it got converted to a lease. So I'm going to say create renewal op created by myself, purpose, create the renewal opportunity record based on the original op. And from here, I can say, okay, how many records do I want to create? I want to create one, so that's perfect. And from here, how do I want to set the record fields? Do I want to use all the values from a previous record I got from Salesforce? Or do I want to set fields specifically to how I want? I'm actually going to choose the second option. And from here, I'm going to create a record of this object. I want to create an opportunity, so I'm going to search for opportunity. Perfect. So now it's telling me, okay, since you chose to set each field individually, go ahead and find the fields you want to set. So I'm going to say, okay, let's go ahead and do the name for the opportunity. Let's find the stage name. Let's do the close date. And whenever I'm setting values for records, I tend to always do the required fields first. That way I don't miss them and I don't error out the flow later on. I'm going to choose the record type ID. Let's maybe do the account. And let's do one custom field, the rent. For time's sake, there's so many other fields on this opportunity I can set. I'm just going to do these 6. So now for the name, what do I want to name this opportunity when it gets made? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it equal to the name of the account the opportunity is attached to, plus string on the end, renewal. That way, whenever a user looks at this record, they know it's a renewal opportunity. Now for here, I'm going to set the stage name. I'm going to say it's a new op. Close date. Since we know that this opportunity is going to be a renewal opportunity for the day the lease expires in our system, I'm actually going to set this close date when we expect this opportunity to be closed equal to the expiration date of the lease. That way we know it's always going to be coming up. And this kind of brings me to my next best practice. Just like in Process Builder or any other automation in Salesforce for that matter, you never want to hard code IDs because these IDs can change going from org to org, sandbox to sandbox. So what you want to do is, what I'm going to do right here is I'm actually going to grab the record type ID from the original op. I don't want to grab the ID from the URL and paste it in there because it can't error out going to other orgs. And finally, I'm going to set the account ID, which is just the lookup to the account. I'm going to find the account. Perfect. And then I'm going to look at the previous opportunity again, and I'm going to copy over the rent into this new one. And from here, I'm just setting these 6 fields equal to some values from the previous opportunity or the original opportunity. Now click done. Now we're kind of halfway through our flow here. So now when I connect these nodes, you'll notice it'll bring it up another screen right here. This is telling me which path do I want to go down. Do I want to set this equal to not null, which is what I want, in which case if this lease space collection, this collection of records isn't null, then go to create this renewal opportunity. And now you'll notice I didn't set the other one. I didn't set the other one for null. If it is null, it'll just stop right there. So now I'm creating my new renewal record. Now we're going to get into more advanced flow stuff. I want to loop over these lease spaces. So I'm going to drag this loop element onto my canvas. loop. So what this is going to do now is I know I need to also clone all of the least space records that were attached to the original opportunity. So, but I don't want to just clone them outright, because if I did that, it would just simply clone those records and I'd still attach it to the original opportunity. I need to somehow clone those records and then attach them to the new opportunity I just made, that renewal one. And that's what we're going to do in this loop. So loop over least space collection. So now I'm going to do my description like always. Purpose. Loop over the least space collection and reassign the opportunity lookup to the newly created / cloned renewal op. And now what this will do is every time it goes in the loop, it's going to look at that least space record, reassign its clone to the new opportunity we just made, and then it'll do its thing. So now I got to tell it, hey, which group of records do I want to loop over? And if you search in here, collection variable, we have just one choice, our least space collection, which is what we want. Now from here, you can specify direction. Do you want to go from front to back or back to front? Doesn't really matter for this one, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And now a new loop variable. And if you have trouble with this, I'm not going to lie, this kind of tripped me up in the beginning of learning flows as well. But think of it as just an iteration or instance every time the loop is going through. So the first time it goes through, it grabs one record from that collection, does its thing to it, then goes back to the loop. And then the next time it goes, the second record in that collection, and third and fourth and so on. So I'm creating a new variable. And in here, I'm gonna, or create a new resource, my bad. And that resource is gonna be a variable. And whenever I name variables inside of a loop, I always put the word loop before them, just so I know when I'm looking at my resource manager, I know those variables are used in loops somewhere in the flow. And so from here, I'm going to call it least space item. So now this is going to be a temporary variable. Every time it goes through the loop, it's going to store one of the records from that collection. And created by me. Purpose. Serves as an iteration or instance of the loop. And then from there, I'm going to make this a record variable, because the collection, if we think about it, is just a collection of records. It needs to be able to pass in one of those records into this variable. So I need to make it a record variable. And now I need to tell it which object does this need to be a record of. And since we're looping over least spaces, I need to choose least spaces. Perfect. So now, every time the loop goes through this collection, it'll take one of the records inside this collection and put it inside of this variable. And I'm done with that, and I'm going to connect it. All right. So now we have two more steps we need to do with this loop. Just because I created the loop doesn't mean it's going to do anything. I have to tell it what to do inside the loop. So now I'm going to drag what's called an assignment element onto my canvas. And this assignment element is going to basically take one of those records, that loop space item or least space item, is going to update the opportunity to that newly created renewal opportunity. So that's what I'm going to do. Update lookup, and again, created by me. Purpose, update the op lookup on the lease space record to the newly created / clone renewal op. So this is how I'm going to do it. So I know that this loop lease space item variable is just one of the records inside of that collection. So I'm going to choose this. I'm going to say, hey, take a look at the lease space item. Take a look at the, wait, do I want to do this? Nope, I don't want to do that, my bad. So what I want to do is this. Where is it? Actually, that is what I'm going to do. Lost my train of thought for a second. There we go. So now that loop space item, that opportunity, I'm going to set it equal to that opportunity ID from this newly created renewal op. So now every time this loop runs, it's going to hit this node, and I'm going to hit done and connect it for each item in the collection. Perfect. Now for each item in this collection, it's going to run, hit this node. It's going to update the lookup for the opportunity to this newly created renewal opportunity. Now, what I could do after this, if I really wanted to, it'd be bad practice, was I can drag a create records node and put it inside the loop. That is bad practice, and here's why. So let's pretend for a second I did drag a create records element inside of this loop. So every time what it would do is it would go to the loop, it would update the lookup, which is basically saying which lease space, which opportunity is this lease space attached to, create that lease space record, and go back in the loop. And it would do this however many records were inside of this collection. The reason why you don't want to do that is you can hit your transaction limits if there's large data sets you're using this flow for. Imagine it like this. Imagine you're 17 again, you have your driver's license, your parents are sending you to the store. And rather than giving you an entire list of shopping to do, they only give you one item at a time. You go to the store, you get that item, come back to your parents, they give you a new item. Imagine if there's 100 items on that list. That would get very annoying very quick. So what we want to do instead is for each lease space record we update, we want to put that updated record onto a new collection, a new list. And then after this loop is done, we're going to create all of those records at once. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to say, hey, let's do another assignment. Add to cloned lease space collection created by me. Purpose. I want to add the newly updated cloned lease space records to this new collection for later insertion. And basically, after this loop is done, we're going to create all the records at once. And now I'm going to create a new resource. And again, I'm going to make a new variable. This is kind of my typical go-to. And I'm going to name this loop because I know this variable only is going to exist inside my loop. It only should be updated inside my loop. And then I'm going to say cloned, let's do lease space collection. And now created by me. Purpose. A list to store all the updated lease space records. And now it's asking for my data type again. I want to say this is a collection of records. I want to say record. And this is the most important part of this as well. I need to make sure that this checkbox is checked because I need to allow this variable to store multiple records at the same time. And then which records I want to store in this variable. I want to say lease spaces since that's what all these records are. And perfect, that's done. And now what I'm going to do is I have this collection, this list. I want to add, each time the loop goes through, I want to add each item that gets updated to this new list. I hit done. I'm going to connect these nodes. Perfect. And I'm going to connect this back to the loop. So now every time it's going to go update the lookup, add it to the new list to go shopping with or update later on, and boom, back to the loop. And it's going to do that however many times or however many records are inside this least space collection. And I'm almost done. I have 2 more things to do in this flow. Now what I need to do is create those newly updated least space records with their updated opportunity lookup inside the Salesforce. So now I'm going to say create clone least space records. Again, created by me. Purpose. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, hey, insert the newly updated least space records into Salesforce. And it's going to ask me how many records you want to create. Well, I want to create multiple records. So as soon as I click this option, it's going to ask for, okay, which list or which collection of records do you want to create? And I know that all the updated least space records are going to be inside this variable. So that's what I'm going to choose. And I'm going to hit done. And after I connect these nodes, you'll see after the last item of the loop, so basically whenever the last item is done, it'll go outside the loop and go to this element. And it'll create all those records that were put inside the list or this collection. So functionally, our flow is done. We're able to get all the least space records from the opportunity. We're able to clone the opportunity to a new renewal opportunity. We're able to grab all those least space records and update it to that new opportunity, and then we're creating those records all at once rather than one at a time. But there's one more thing we should do, and it's kind of best practice to do so. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to drag a subflow element, and this is something I set up beforehand. You won't have this in your org. And I'm going to say, this is just a flow I made previously. All this flow does is, let me pass this in real quick. All this flow does is whenever this flow, the one I was just working on, errors out, it'll go to use this subflow and send a fault message or basically an error message to me, the admin. And Salesforce already kind of does this, but it'll prevent your user from, it'll error out your user during the operation. And so what I'm gonna do now is this is a subflow, and I would highly encourage to use subflows whenever you can. And because think of them as little components, little component flows that you can use inside of bigger flows. And the more of these subflows you have at your disposal, the less you have to create all these nodes by yourself or in each flow. Basically, in the long run, it'll save you more time because, oh, I have a component for this. I can just go use that and in my flow I'm building right now, and it'll do that certain action for me, whatever that subflow does, and then it'll return something to me that I can use rather than doing all this every single time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oh, not that. I'm going to connect this get records to this subflow. And you'll notice that this line is different than all my other ones. This is a fault line. So basically, what's going to happen here is, let's say for some reason, I don't know how they're leasing a space from us if they have no lease spaces on their record, but if for some reason we can't find any lease spaces attached to their lease, it'll come down here and send this error email to me. And functionally, and also doing all error checking, we're done with this flow. And now I'm going to save it. Save. It'll do its thing. And you'll notice I still need to activate it and debug it. But before I activate this and put this inside the process builder to fire, I want to debug this first. And the debugger in here is fantastic. So I'm going to hit debug. and it's going to bring me to this screen whenever it loads. There we go. So now it's saying, hey, debug the flow, and you still need to pass in the record ID that it was going to normally use anyways. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go grab the record ID. So this is just a test opportunity record I made just before this presentation. I'm going to grab the record ID from this and paste it right in here. And one thing about debugging is, let's say in our flow, we have these create records in our flow. When you're debugging, it's still going to create those records live in your org. And you'll see what I mean here in just a second. So I'm going to hit run. The reason why debugging is great is this kind of worked out as expected. It's all done. It did its thing that I told it to do. If something were to go wrong, it gives you a step-by-step breakdown of how the flow ran each step of the way. As you can see, here's my lookup where I got the opportunity record. Here's the lookup where I got the lease spaces from the opportunity, and so on and so forth. So I encourage you to highly use debugging before deploying your flow, just to test out that everything is working as expected. But I'm going to go back. I know this is all done. I'm going to click out of this window. And if I actually go back to this list view, you'll notice it actually created a record for me. It created this Bitwise Industries, which is just the name of the account I told it to use, and plus the words renewal. So I know my flow is working. I'm going to activate it. And now I'm going to use this flow inside a process builder. So I'm going to go to process builder real quick. I know the process I need to add it to. So I'm going to click on a process and update it. And I'm going to clone this real quick, make a new version. All right, and I'm going to add it to this node. Basically, whenever an opportunity is closed won and the record type is a leasing standard record, I'm going to add action. I'm going to say, hey, use a flow. I'm going to say launch renewal op flow, and I'm going to search for a flow. And I'm going to say, perfect, renew lease op. That's the flow I was just working on. And now here it'll tell you, okay, set some flow variables. And you remember way back when we, our first node in this flow, get the opportunity records, this is where we pass in the ID of the opportunity rather than copying the URL and pasting it in that debug. So I'm going to say add row, which variable do I want to populate, which is our op record ID. I'm going to make it a field reference to the opportunity ID. Nope, not that one. Perfect. So now whenever this process fires and this it meets this criteria, it's going to launch another flow and the flow I just built, and it's going to pass in the record ID of the opportunity into the flow to use. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to activate this new version and confirm it. So now my flow is active, my process is active, and now I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to delete this record just to show you. So I'm going to delete this. Perfect. So now I'm going to update this test opportunity to closed won. Again, select close stage. I'm going to say it's closed won, and the record type is the record type we set in the process builder. And when I hit save, what it should do is update, do its thing. There we go. Okay, I was getting nervous there. All right, so now if I go back to look at my opportunities, it created another one. I remember I deleted the previous one and it just made this one right now. And it set those fields I told it to set. It set the account name, the opportunity name, the close date, and you'll notice that this is for a year in the future because I told it to be the expiration date of the lease before. And it set the rent as well. But that's pretty much what I had planned. Let me go back to my presentation real quick. I know there's probably a ton of questions, so we'll get to that in a second. But again, just kind of going over best practices again. Remember, document, describe in detail your flow, all the descriptions inside your flow. Be consistent with your variable naming. use decisions after you get element to check if there's no results. And that's what I did after I got all the lease spaces from an opportunity. Never hard code IDs because they can change org to org or sandbox to sandbox. Never put any create, update, get, or delete elements inside of a loop because that's super annoying and you'll time out your transactions. Whereas what you want to do is add them all to a list and then use that list or collection to insert or update later. Use fault paths as much as you can, just in case something does come up and something errors out. And I would say this is even more important when you do screen flows. Because in screen flows, you can actually say, if something errors out, go to this error screen, and you can set that up. Use subflows when you can. This will just save you time in the long run. As you start building up a component list or a list of subflows you can always use and inject into your current flows, it will just save you time. And then use a debugger before you activate your flow. That way you can test out stuff is working as expected. You can see a step-by-step breakdown on the right of what's going on in your flow. And if you want more resources on flows, I attached a couple of links, actually 4 links in this presentation, which is going to be shared afterwards anyways. And you can go here and learn more about process builders and flows together, flow builders, and then best practices for flows. And I think that's all I had planned. I'm going to hand it over back to Janae. And yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Jacob. Really appreciated that. That was quite thorough. So we do have some questions as you anticipated, and these are going to be, looks like questions for both Justin and Jacob. But again, if you have not had an opportunity to type in your questions yet, I want to direct you over to the questions portion of the dashboard. Go ahead and type your questions in there, and as we get through the ones I've already received, we will answer yours. So the first question, an MVP sounds great for something like web development, but how do I use it as a Salesforce admin? Let's see, make sure you,
Sorry.
Yep, perfect. Now we can hear you.
Okay, so that's a good question. So I've been, doing web development and such using Agile and MVPs for about 9 years now, but not longer than that. But for Salesforce specifically, oftentimes you want to try and build everything at once. You want to build an entire platform. You want to build a Cadillac when you're not even sure that you're driving in the right direction. So as much as possible, try to pare down what you're doing at first, what your first users are going to use. Maybe rather than spending a lot of time up front and spending a lot of time kind of designing and planning and figuring out this massive schema, for example, and figuring out all the different flows you're going to need and all the automations. Maybe start with a very simple schema. Start out with the small set of objects that you can start out with that's going to start providing value for your users. You can, and then as your users start to use it, then you add on more objects, you add on more relationships, you add in more automation, more flows, and each time try to build on more and more value. But what's likely to happen when you first kind of start out and you're first building things and getting out in front of customers, you're going to learn a lot more about whether or not you're going in the right direction and whether or not this is something that's actually valuable to users. Because the thing that's worse than finding out that your users don't actually want what you've built is if you find out they don't want what you built after months of planning and putting it all together. So just try to, as soon as you can, get something out there.
Great, thank you, Justin. How do you know ahead of time whether to build a process, a flow, or use Apex? So Jacob, that sounds like a question
Gotcha.
for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll admit I'm not really a developer at all. Flows are probably the closest thing I'll get to development soon. I do plan on using development later on down the line, but knowing when to use process builders, flows, or Apex really comes down to your use case. Well, what the heck are you building? What's the why behind it? And so with process builder, it is a very simple way to build automation. And if process builder basically, if you're able to meet the conditions of if this happens, do this, process builder is usually your best bet. But if for some reason you need more complex decisions or need more complex conditions or need to do stuff that process builder just can't, like if you're trying to clone child records of a parent record, you're going to have to use a flow for that. And so it really depends on what you're trying to do with flows versus process builder. Flows are kind of your middle step. And then if for some reason you just cannot do it with the flow, then that's when you turn to Apex. And Apex should be your last consideration to build something in Salesforce, because the more Apex you have in your org, the more you're going to have to maintain that code over time. And it's going to create a lot of technical debt inside your org as well.
All right, thank you, Jacob. How did employees and managers at Salesforce respond to having to create V2 moms all the time?
You know what? It was, you kind of had responses all over the board. I know that some employees, really tried to just, do the bare minimum. But I really found, and I know a lot of other people really found it to be a great way of kind of framing a conversation, especially with your manager or your leadership, because you could provide feedback on their V2 mom. One thing I think it really helped to avoid is there's a term I learned recently is mushroom management, where you keep your employees in the dark and you feed them crap. This allows you to really be engaged with the process of providing vision, providing your feedback on the values, but also I started to sneak in things into the methods for my own V2 mom, which were things that I wanted to do that I don't necessarily know if my manager otherwise would have known I wanted to do. So it really did set kind of this nice stage for kind of managing upwards, which is something that a lot of organizations don't really allow space for. So yeah, you kind of had the whole gamut though of responses on that.
All right. What were people doing before Agile MVP and how does it compare? Is there any reason for doing it the old way?
Yeah, so before kind of the lean startup movement, before agile development, the what was really popular before was called waterfall. And so you imagine you get a bunch of executives in a room and they come up with an idea, they kind of flesh it out, and then they hand it off to a team that's doing the design. And then the design could take a month, could take a few months. And they're drawing every single little pixel of where it's going to go. They're talking to a lot of customers. They're every single little thing that could happen. They're kind of planning every little thing out. Then it goes to the developers, and the developers have this massive thing that they have to build, and it's going to take them months. And then once the developers are done, then it goes to QA. And a lot of times, by the time you get to that point, you're right up against your release deadline. So if there are any issues, it's this mad scramble to get things done. And then you send it out to users, and oftentimes it's something that has only been you've been working on the same thing for months. For example, the traditional Salesforce release cycle, Salesforce releases 3 times a year, which at the time they started doing that was incredibly fast. I'm sorry, every 4 months, so 3 times a year. At desk.com, we were releasing new features to customers up to 12 times a day. And so you get really quick feedback on what you put out there. When would be a good idea to use waterfall? I suppose if you're building something like a rocket ship or a building, something where you're not going to get multiple chances to kind of add on to it and improve on it, and you really do need to get it right the first time. But for most of us, getting it right the first time isn't really that important.
All right, it looks like those are all the questions that we've received. So thank you to Justin and Jacob for answering those, because had you guys disconnected, I would have been lost. I wouldn't know what to say. So it's glad to have the experts on the call as well. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit, spend a few minutes to talk a little bit about what Shift3 Technologies is and does. Pardon me. So with that, let me turn it over to JP. JP, you should have controls now. We can't hear you, so you might be on mute.
Hi, I'm starting this new trend where I like to get at least 30 seconds into my monologue before I realize that no one can hear me. So just wanted to stay true to that, as I have been all week. Thank you, everyone, for being on the presentation today. And thank you to Janae for putting this together, as well as Justin. Justin, good to see you again. Justin and I are working on I'm going to say one of his many startup initiatives, as he is quite industrious, but working on that. And then Jacob and I, of course, do work out of the same office at Shift3, at least when that office is open. So yeah, just wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about Shift3 as an organization, and then the larger entity it's a part of, and just really good rules and general practice as far as you know, when you're working with outside developers on Salesforce, you know, these are basically sort of our best practices moving forward to create the collaboration and to address a lot of the things that we talked about on this call, you know, including, you know, what is an MVP for Salesforce? And that was a super valid question. I think that it's easy for us to apply that to a new build if it is custom software development. If it is something that doesn't exist, and we need to really analyze where do we get started. With Salesforce, I think that it's a different approach, only because in the way that we view it is that it is an existing application, and so it's easy to, you know, kind of take it out of the box and go, well, I guess this is my MVP. But due to the high level of configuration and customization, you know, a lot of the same mindset that you have towards a custom software project, you can apply towards Salesforce. And so I'm going to get a little bit into process and hopefully a good way of looking at that as far as saying, oh, you know, kind of, I guess, not really separating the two, but almost merging the ideas of how we view Salesforce and its customization in the same way that we would building a brand new piece of software. But anyways, I will get to that. So to tell you a little bit about Shift3, as the slide there so aptly states, Shift3 is part of a larger organization called Bitwise Industries. Bitwise Industries is in Fresno, California, and it is even less necessarily than well, more than just a company. It represents a technology movement, and I am not able to get this slide to move. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm sure I've overcompensated. It'll go 4 down now. Anyway, so Bitwise Industries is a technology movement in the Central Valley, and in the same way that you know, technology is not the end but the means to the end, Bitwise represents a technology movement to revitalize the Central Valley. The company started about 7 years ago, and it is founded on 3 premises as listed here: place, education, and execution, or proof of concept. And so basically the first thing was you know, the place side. So Bitwise Industries has a number of buildings from Bakersfield all the way through Merced, where we basically rally our tech community, and these serve as places for people to get together to become a technology ecosystem that's greater than the sum of its parts. For us, it was that prior to Bitwise's inception in Fresno, there was a fairly decent technology startup scene. However, no one knew about it because these companies would reach a critical mass and say, well, If I want to grow, if I want to continue to build my company, I got to take it out of Fresno. I've got to move to a larger market. And we're really stopped and said, well, why? We have the resources and the potential here. Why are we, not allowing these companies to grow? And so the building side represented the sense of community, and the idea that, yes, of course you can do this in Fresno. You can build a technology company anywhere. And so that's where the building side comes into play for us. With that, then, promising companies, yeah, you can stay in Fresno and you can grow, you can accomplish all of your goals here in the Central Valley. That's basically a promise that we extended to our local companies and to companies outside the valley as well that wanted to relocate. So to fulfill that, the key thing to that growth, of course, is being able to provide the human beings that are doing the coding and the developing, and thus the education component of GeekWise Academy. GeekWise Academy is a technologist vocational training school. It is currently the largest in the U.S. for training developers and coders. About 6,000 graduates actually since its inception in 2013. About 80% of those go on from the academy to pursue careers in technology. And so that's the other component. And then there's the execution side, or the proof of concept, and that would be Shift 3 itself. The idea being that you show the world that you can create a world-class technology community in a area known primarily for agriculture. You can create technology industries and all of that there. You can take people in retail jobs and train them on coding, and you don't need a four-year degree. People that are really drawn to that and have the skill set can go on to do amazing things. And then, of course, the Shift 3 side of creating world-class technology out of that same community. And so that's more or less the Bitwise model and the ecosystem that we have. This graph here sort of really represents how they all feed into each other. I think ecosystem is a very easy word to throw around, but everything does feed into itself in the sense that the buildings host the companies that feed into the Bitwise community. Those companies provide opportunities, which is where GeekWise comes in. GeekWise then helps those those companies to grow. Shift 3 is a part of that, not just on the Salesforce side, but also on the custom software development side. And so really creating companies, and it's been great to see people that come in with an idea, and now years later, we see them with a full-blown tech company that is going on to do great things and becoming, in some cases, an entire suite of apps for a particular industry. And so all of these things really do nurture each other and help each other to grow. If you look there at the bottom, actually, that's part of the building side. That is Hashtag, which is a shared workspace and was one of the first entities out of Bitwise. But that's sort of a general overview as to the Bitwise community. As we look at Shift 3 itself, Shift 3 started as a custom software development firm, and we were able to take a lot of lessons from that. Excuse me, slides are bouncing around. And now we're applying them, of course, to our application of Salesforce services and development. We are based in Fresno, as I mentioned. We have an incredible depth of talent on our bench from the developer side. And so, we're able to speak with people about ideas that they have for applications and initiatives. And then, we bring them back to our shop. And our solutions architects will brainstorm on the idea and say, well, based on everything you're telling me, it'd be great if we could build on platform blank. Well, that's great because, again, with the depth of developers we have, every weapon in the arsenal, every proverbial tool in the chest is ours to utilize. And so being technology agnostic to make sure that we are making the best decision for our clients. Salesforce, of course, being an area of expertise for us. Jacob was an excellent point towards that. Obviously, with the information that he put forward for us today. He's one of a number of developers that we've had that have a number of Salesforce certification and badges. And so kind of created a bit of a Justice League type of approach there as well, as far as really finding out what people's needs are and having specialists in all of those areas, making sure that we're applying the right tools to address the problems, the challenges, or the priorities at hand. And then, as I mentioned with Bitwise, revitalizing the Central Valley, but also really creating opportunities for growth, and those opportunities extend to companies, extend to people with ideas that maybe didn't know where to take them, but also extending to those individuals and people that, you know, as I kind of briefly alluded to, you know, maybe had jobs and were looking for careers, and technology is a great way to go about that, you know, if it's something that you're drawn to. And so we specifically want to make sure that we're extending those opportunities to people that have not traditionally been actively sought after, although it's frequently talked about, as far as the actual deliverables on that in getting people involved that aren't. And so you see here where we do have a very strong focus on bringing in, you know, minorities into the technology industry, as well as women, and of course, you know, first generation as well. So we have an incredibly diverse workforce. These are the stats that we have, and as I mentioned, they're not the kind of numbers that you historically or traditionally would have seen in a custom technology firm, or really technology firms in general. So little bit about the team itself. Up there in the corner, that is Irma. She is one of the 2 founding members of Bitwise Industries. And so she is currently overseeing the Shift 3 development portion of the company, to include our custom software development as well as our Salesforce development initiatives. Janae, who of course put the presentation on for us. Chris and Corey representing the development side itself, and this is again one of the great things that comes with a larger and more established custom software firm. You know, you have Chris that is very project focused as far as getting results and making sure that we are delivering based on our client specifications, whereas we have Corey that is more on the development operation side, making sure that we as a company are staying on top of you know, the best possible practices and best possible tools, so that we are delivering in a timely, cost-effective manner to our clients as well. On the other side here, this is our business development team. I oversee the custom software as well as the Salesforce side, and then Amber Wood, who is a dedicated Salesforce business development manager, who's very familiar, of course, with Salesforce as a product, as a development kit, and then also of our processes and procedures, and how we get wins for our clients on the platform. And leading with that, so some of the competitive advantages that we have, you know, as I mentioned, the process planning on the front end, and I'm going to get into that on this next slide, but really making sure that we have a firm understanding of what it is we're looking to accomplish before we just jump in there and start doing things, and then accountability and really our client involvement process as well, to make sure that the results that we are interpreting and that we're seeing are the same that as the ones that you're expressing. So validating that and making sure that we're moving forward in a way that makes sense, and in a way that provides immediate deliverables to our clients as well. And of course, project competency on the custom software side, you know, a number of different skill sets that we have, a number of different ways of building things. And on the Salesforce side, again, that Justice League approach that I mentioned, which is having specialists sort of in each of these disciplines within that discipline, to make sure that we are delivering the results that make the most sense for the objectives that are put in front of us. And then, of course, also being here on our West Coast, it is nice to have people, you know, in the same time zone and same schedule, because that collaboration, of course, is certainly crucial when you're building something like this. So again, a little bit about the services that we have on the Salesforce side, staff augmentation as well, just for you know, additional resources for a project, and then some of the custom development resources as well. So this is sort of the ideal customer journey, and this is how we develop, and really what we have found through practice and experience is the best way to go about it. And this can be applied for development within your own organization on Salesforce, or if it's something outside of that even. This premise that we apply here was based on our successes from more of a custom software approach. And just to kind of walk you through that, the very first step obviously is the engagement, which is making sure that this is someone that you do want to work with, and you want to make sure that you have that matched because you want the long-term relationship. Software platforms, of course, are an ever-evolving and growing thing. We have clients on the Shift3 side that we've worked with for years because the philosophy, of course, is, well, we want to build, and this is where we'll kind of get into the MVP question. Like, what do we do right now? What is the immediate need that we can solve? And so let's build that and let's deploy that. But let's get it into your world. Let's get it into the hands of your users as a jumping off point, realizing that this will continue to grow and evolve. And the point with that being is make sure you have someone that you really do enjoy working with. This can't be a solely transactional relationship because you need people that are going to be able to get into your organization, understand your needs, interpret what you're saying, and find the way to express that best. So it is a very close relationship. So you want to make sure that these are people that you do hit it off with. Once that's been established, for us, it goes really into immersion. And on the Salesforce development side, we provide a health assessment. Now, this is, you of course can run your optimizer report right out of Salesforce. This is certainly more than that. While that is a component and something we certainly look at, we speak with our clients as well. We learn about the immediate challenges you're facing. Again, kind of addressing that MVP thing, what's going on right now. We do understand that your organization will grow. We understand that there are other things you'll want to take on. But what is the MVP is what are we dealing with right now, and how can we resolve some immediate concerns with the idea that once those are tamped down a bit, that's going to encourage people to start thinking, oh, okay, great. So that fire's kind of out right now. That's great. Ooh, it'd be great if next it did blank, whatever that might be. And so that's where the immersion process comes in. That's where the health assessment comes in of looking, yes, from a data point, what's going on with your Salesforce application. But what that optimizer report doesn't tell you is where you're going to go next. Where is your organization going? Where do you want to grow and expand? And so merging those and basically kind of drawing up a report and saying, here's where we are now, here's where you want to go, here's how we recommend you get there. And putting that in front of our clients as really sort of the envision portion. So when we take the time to learn, to analyze where you are now and where you want to go, presenting that back and saying, hey, this is the page that we're on, is it the page you're on as well? And we'll sort of cycle between those two back and forth until we really finalize things. Once we have the plan in place, of course, then it becomes a matter of execution, which is making these adjustments on Salesforce, deploying solutions, addressing these problems, but then getting them in front of clients to say, hey, does this answer that? Having a test environment spun up so that you can get in there and play around with it and validate the solution makes sense before going live with it. And so in the same way that we will spend time between immersion and envision, going back and forth, we do the same thing between execute and validate until we finally reach a point where we're like, yes, this, here's our solution, this addresses our concerns, and then we go ahead and we move those to production. And like I said, at that point, we let them work in your world and in your organization for a while. And once they do, usually within a 6-month period, there's a whole list of other things you realize that you would like next. And then we sort of start this process over. So a bit of a perpetual loop with that, but that's the way that software grows and develops in an intelligent, educated sense that is really driven by your users themselves. So when we talk about what the MVP is, again, going through this process, but saying, here's where we are now, here are the immediate needs that we're facing, and us as a provider of development services in Salesforce platform, or even in a custom build, really understanding this is what's going to meet that need now. Let's address that, and then let's move forward in a way that is user driven, in a way that makes sense. And so that's a bit about our process and about us as a company. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and give Janae a minute here, quite literally, to kind of wrap things up. And so with that, thank you all. And if you have any questions, we are certainly around. And I'm sure Janae will get you our contact info at the end of the seminar.
Perfect. Thank you so much, JP. So we appreciate you coming to this close with us. And as I said at the beginning, there's some information that we wanted to give you. So at the conclusion of this webinar, you should be taken to a form which will be asking you your mailing address. Since many of us are working from home, we don't have your address at home. We usually have your business address. So if you wouldn't mind giving us your mailing address, we would love to send you a thank you gift for attending our second webinar in the series. Now we do have our third webinar coming up just next week, next Thursday, April 16th. It will also be at 9 a.m. and that will be featuring Jeff Scott, who will be talking us through the second chapter of digital storytelling, Master the Secret Art of Lightning Pages. And we will also have Melissa from Shift3 Technologies talking us through how to effectively build communities. So want to encourage you all to register for next week's webinar. And again, this is a 7-part series. You can attend one or you can attend all of them. And our hopes are that you get actionable items and learnings and tips and tricks that you can walk away with and immediately apply to your day-to-day workflow. So I want to thank you again from Shift3 Technologies for attending this webinar. I also want to let you know, if you didn't already figure this out, but today's webinar was brought to you by the letter J, since we had Justin, Jacob, Janae, and JP all presenting today. That dawned on me just a few minutes ago. So again, appreciate everyone's attendance today, and you will be receiving an email in your inbox from me with links to the full presentation plus the video itself. So have a great day and stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.